Good evening, this is Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Our big focus tonight, the two shockers from the election campaign. The Prime Minister's polarising speech on Hindus and non-Hindus, and the UP Chief Minister who now calls India's army Modi's army. Both statements seen by many as a violation of the Election Commission's rules. But where is the EC? And is polarisation and the politicization of the army the only way the BJP thinks it can win this election? That's something we'll look at closely over the next hour. Well, a day after the Congress announced that Rahul Gandhi would contest from a second seat, that's Wayanad in Kerala, the Prime Minister was in full attack mode today, saying that the Congress was afraid of fielding candidates from constituencies dominated by majority Hindus because he said the Congress had insulted Hindus by using the term Hindu terror. He said the Congress had branded peace-loving Hindus as terrorists and that it knew it would be punished by the community. The PM saying all of that in his speech in Maharashtra today. The Congress later hit back, saying that it saw everyone as a citizen of India. And it wasn't just what the PM said. What he actually said was factually incorrect. Wayanad, from where Rahul Gandhi is contesting, is not a seat where Hindus are in a minority. We're looking at the 2011 census figures, and these show that Hindus actually form 49.48% of the population, while Muslims are at 28.6% and Christians at 21.3%. Now, if you add the two minority populations together of of Muslims and Christians, it comes to about 49.9%. So it would be almost even Stevens between the Hindu population then and the minority population of Christians and Muslims, which is a unique feature of this constituency, though not very different from the general trend in Kerala itself. Let's look at what the Prime Minister said today and how the Congress responded.
आतंकवाद हिंदू के साथ जोड़ दिया, इसके कारण अब उनकी हिम्मत नहीं पड़ रही है कि जहां पर मेजॉरिटी के लोग रहते हैं वहां चुनाव लड़ने की हिम्मत नहीं है, और इसलिए भाग करके जहां मेजॉरिटी माइनॉरिटी में है वहां शरण लेने के लिए मजबूर हो गए। हिंदुओं को आतंकवादी कहने का पाप किसने किया? भाइयों बहनों, ऐसी कांग्रेस को माफ कर सकते हैं क्या? इस देश के करोड़ों लोगों पर हिंदू आतंकवाद का दाग लगाने का प्रयास कांग्रेस ने ही किया है। हजारों साल का इतिहास, हिंदू कभी आतंकवाद करे ऐसी एक भी घटना है क्या?
If he cares for that India which is south of the Vindhyas, what stops him from contesting a seat in South India? Unlike the Prime Minister of India, who sees the citizens of India in terms of their communities and not as citizens of India, the Indian National Congress sees each and every of the 124 crore citizens of India as Indians.
So the Prime Minister's comments there creating a lot of controversy today, and it wasn't just him. The Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Adityanath, today shockingly called India's army Mr Modi's sena, Mr Modi's army, something the Election Commission is now looking into. Listen in.
कांग्रेस के लोग आतंकवादियों को बिरयानी खिलाते थे और मोदी जी की सेना आतंकवादियों को गोली और गोला देती है। यही अंतर है।
Well, my colleague Vishnu Shom joining us with a quick update on that, because Vishnu, we know that the Election Commission is now looking into this, but also that the top brass of the army is not happy.
Well, I don't know about the top brass of the army, and we really don't know how far they've taken their complaints, if any, to the government. But I can tell you that as an institution, the army is extremely upset about these remarks. They find some of these remarks to be offensive because their point, and this is consistent of all the three armed forces, is that it's not Modi ji ki sarkar, it's India ki sarkar. It's India, it's India's army. It's not Modi ji's army. It's India's army. Under no circumstances should the army be looked at as anything except an Indian force. And therefore, when remarks are made on the political campaign by political leaders to suggest that in fact it was the Prime Minister who had the army under his control, that's not something which the Indian army is at all happy about. At some level, this may have been brought up in the Defence Ministry, but typically the army does not want to make political statements about political remarks which have been made. But this particular remark Modi ji ki sena, which is what was mentioned by Yogi Adityanath, has been found to be something completely unacceptable.
All right, Vishnu, thanks very much for that. And let's get straight into this with our panelists tonight. Pawan Khera, national spokesperson of the Congress party, is here in the studio with us. Lalita Kumaramangalam of the BJP. We have Sagrika Ghosh, senior journalist, with us. Also with us, Mr. K.C. Tyagi, Secretary General and spokesperson of the JDU, and we'll be joined by Dr. Qureshi, the former Chief Election Commissioner, in just a little while from now. Lalita Kumaramangalam, to you first. Do you honestly think, as a right-thinking citizen of this country, that the Prime Minister was justified in making this distinction between Hindus and non-Hindus, minority and majority? Let us say, hypothetically, that Wayanad was a Muslim-majority constituency, which it is not. Are Muslims not Indian citizens? Are Christians not Indian citizens? Why did the Prime Minister say this?
Nidhi, let's go back a few years to 2008, when no less than the Home Minister, the then Home Minister of India, P. Chidambaram, when talking to the group of senior police officials, including various other officials who deal with law and order, senior most officials in the states, had made a statement where he said that we should all be and we should all remain ever vigilant against the recently uncovered phenomenon of saffron terrorism. Now, this has been reported by the Hindu of the 25th of August 2010. By no means a paper that can be considered pro-BJP and therefore making such reports. So I'm not exaggerating, I'm not lying, I'm merely stating a fact. Now, even after this, over the years, several notables from the Congress, let me just mention two more names, Digvijay Singh and Sushil Kumar Sinde, who was also then a Home Minister, have said Hindu terrorism, saffron terrorism. So when the Prime Minister says that this party has insulted a particular community by giving a non-secular, they are the ones who are supposed to be secular, please remember, in fact a religious tag to terrorism, why is he wrong? It's a fact. And this is election season. He has asked people from that community, can you forgive a party that has made these statements not once, not twice, several times? They've replied to him. Now, coming to Wayanad, let's remember one fact. Agreed that the Muslims and the Christians total 49.9, but it's also a very well known fact that the Hindu vote is not all united. Hindus vote for every party. Whereas we know from many election data through the country, it's not just in Kerala, it's in many parts of the country, to be fair to Kerala, people from the minority community tend to vote anti-BJP, whatever the reason for it may be. Now, as was pointed out by Brinda Karath in an earlier program, not of NDTV,
Ms. Kumaramangalam, are India's minorities not citizens of this country?
They're not Indians.
So why is Mr. Modi making a distinction between minorities
not citizens
and
of this
majority?
Country.
Why is he's the Prime Minister of India? He's not the Prime Minister of the BJP. Why is he making a distinction?
Yes, he is the Prime Minister of India. No, he is the Prime Minister of India. But the fact is that there is a difference in the pattern of voting of the so-called majority and the so-called minority communities, especially the Muslims and the Christians.
And so
this is a well-known fact.
So it's okay for the Prime Minister to take pot shots at minorities because they don't vote for him?
This is an election that's taking place in India.
No, but does that make it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I'm saying, is it okay? Does that make it okay for the Prime Minister to make insinuations about Muslims in particular because he feels that they don't vote for them? Is he not their Prime Minister too?
He has not made any insinuations about Muslims or Christians. What he has said was about the Congress party, not about Muslims or Christians. Let's not misstate things here. Okay, he said that saffron terrorism or Hindu terror is a term that was used by the Congress. So are we willing to support a party?
I do want to mention here,
are you willing to support a party?
That the person who actually coined this term was R.K. Sinha.
No. He said nothing
who
about...
Who is now a minister in your government.
No,
who was then Home Secretary.
It was P. Chidambaram who actually... No, it was initially Mr. P. Chidambaram who did it.
It was Mr. Sinha who coined that term, but that doesn't justify the kind of campaign that we're witnessing today. It's very unfortunate when the campaign becomes an issue of majority, minority. us versus them, it's actually very sad more than anything else. Pawan Khera, Ms. Kumaramangalam, however, says that this actually goes back to the whole
Everybody is entitled to their opinion, as you are, Ms. Nidhi.
I very much am,
well,
and I hope a lot of
unfortunately,
Indian
this
citizens
country
are.
does have people of different opinions.
Clearly.
It's shocking that an erudite lady like Ms. Kumaramangalam is talking the language of Hindu, Muslims, Christians. I think Modi ji brings out the worst amongst the best. Now that's the problem with Modi ji. Fact of the matter is that the Pajhasi ruler of the Kottayam, of Wayanad, of the Kottayam dynasty, was a great freedom fighter. Fact is, please go and have a look at the beautiful mirror temple of the Jain community there. Please don't talk in this language when it comes to elections, Ms. Kumaramangalam. It doesn't befit a woman of your stature at least. Mr. Modi, one can expect, because he doesn't have anything to show what he's done in the last 5 years.
Khera,
So he's back on the
your
turf which he's...
accolades.
I didn't interrupt, ma'am. May I please be allowed to finish my point? Fact is that he has nothing to show in so-called that jumla of his Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. He's forgotten about it, because we know he doesn't believe, he never believed in it. So he is most comfortable talking in a very divisive language, trying to polarize the election, because that's his last resort. You please don't get carried away by in his games, because it doesn't suit you, it doesn't benefit the nation at all. Let's talk facts. Let's talk about the literacy level of Wayanad, 90% literacy. Who stops Mr. Modi to really behave like a statesman, behave like a leader who belongs to every community, and go and contest from Hyderabad? Mr. Owaisi has been inviting him to contest from Hyderabad. Come and contest from Wayanad. Most welcome. Show it that you mean it. You really believe in Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. आइए वायनाड में लड़िए राहुल गांधी के सामने. क्या प्रॉब्लम है आपको?
I want to ask Mr. K.C. Tyagi of the JDU. Mr. Tyagi, as an ally, are you comfortable with this kind of campaign by the Prime Minister?
Sorry, what is ridiculous? Sorry, Nidhi, I want to ask her. What is ridiculous about it? Tell me. How can you use these words without any substantiate? What is ridiculous
Mr.
about
Khera,
it?
you have nothing
What is ridiculous
else to
is what
fall
you are
back
saying.
upon.
What is ridiculous
Let
is
me
what
just
Mr.
say that
Narendra
since
Modi
you
is
have
saying.
issued- Okay, I'm replying. Can you?
No, first,
I'm replying to
please
you. Would you like to
apologize.
listen
How
to
can
my
you say
reply, or
ridiculous?
you just want to
What
shout
is so
at me?
ridiculous about
Let
this?
her answer, let her answer.
No, I'm not. I have no intentions of apologizing.
No, I know you and people like
Let
you
me
and
answer.
people of your party never apologize. The nation knows you never apologize.
Oh, come on. You can say people like
आपने
you,
इस
whatever
देश
that
को
means.
बर्बाद कर दिया. माफी
We
क्या
are
मांगेंगे
supposed
अब
to be the
आप?
ones
आपको
who
सजा मिलने
apologize.
वाली है. आपसे माफी की कोई उम्मीद नहीं
Excuse
है.
me, Mr. Khera. बहुत साफ दिख रहा है कि कौन प्रेजुडिस
अरे
है और
आप
कौन
आइए ना,
नहीं
आप
है.
लड़ लीजिए वायनाड. आइए लड़ लीजिए. देखते हैं कितना वोट ले जाती हैं.
Why should I? I'm not so
I know why
desperate.
should you.
I'm not
I
running
know why
away
should
from
you.
any community.
Send Mr. Modi, send Mr. Amit Shah, send Mr.
Khera,
Adityanath.
If
Send them all
as
to
you
fight.
claim you all have done
ये
so
सनातन
much
संस्था
good
के
and the
पीछे छुपकर
country
क्या
is going
खेल
to
खेल रहे हैं?
vote for you.
Why you hiding
why
behind
don't you
सनातन
ask
संस्था?
Mr. Rahul
आइए खुद
Gandhi
लड़िए.
to stand from Varanasi?
Please come and no, we have no objection. We never said why is the Prime Minister contesting from Varanasi.
Don't
Okay,
try
guys,
You have a
one
problem
second.
with Rahul Gandhi
I-
contesting from
I
Wayanad.
want to ask, I
आपको
want to-
problem है. आप आइए
Okay,
लड़िए.
Pawan
Shouting,
Khera,
it
one
just
second.
shows how scared you are. You don't
we are
even
scared of the
listen to
people
my
who are
I want to
this
ask,
country.
I want to
We
ask.
are scared for this country.
One second. Mr. K.C. Tyagi, as an ally of the BJP, do you agree with this campaign, this tone of the campaign, minority, majority? क्या आप इससे सहमत हैं?
निधि जी, मैं और मेरी पार्टी ना तो कोई इस्लामिक टेररिज्म है, ना कोई हिंदू टेररिज्म है, ना सैफरन है, ना ग्रीन है. और 80 के बाद ये राम जन्मभूमि बाबरी मस्जिद का जब आंदोलन चला, उसके बाद ये टर्म्स जो हैं एग्जिस्टेंस में आए और एक दूसरे के खिलाफ जो एक्सट्रीमिस्ट और फ्रिंज एलिमेंट थे दोनों सेक्शंस के, उन्होंने ही इस तरह के आरोप प्रत्यारोप लगाने शुरू किए. हम सेकुलर सोशलिस्ट विरासत के लोग हैं और हम चुनाव में न इनको मुद्दा बनाना चाहते हैं, न राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर चाहते और न क्षेत्रीय स्तर पर चाहते. लेकिन ये सच है, जिस तरह से कुछ लोगों ने ग्रीन झंडे को लेकर के, इस्लाम के झंडे को लेकर के इस्लामिक टेररिज्म का नाम दिया, इसमें भी दो राय नहीं है कि दो गृह मंत्री चिदम्बरम साहब और शिंदे साहब, उनके समय भी समझौता एक्सप्रेस को लेकर के, अजमेर को लेकर के इस तरह की टिप्पणियां की गई थी जो अनफॉर्चुनेट है, और ये चुनाव के मुद्दे नहीं बनने चाहिए। हमने 5 साल जनता की सेवा की है।
त्यागी जी, आप साफ साफ बता दीजिए, आज जो प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा दैट कांग्रेस डज नॉट हैव द गट्स टू फाइट इन अ मेजॉरिटी कंस्टिट्यूएंसी, दे आर टेकिंग रिफ्यूज वेयर द मेजॉरिटी स्टेज अमंग माइनॉरिटीज, क्या आप इससे सहमत हैं कि नहीं? यस और नो?
देखिए, यस और नो में जवाब इनके निधि जी नहीं होते हैं। हम जो हैं इस तरह के बयान ना देते हैं, और दूसरा ये है कि ये बयान भी सवालों के जवाब में दिए जा रहे हैं। दोनों पार्टियों के जो नेता हैं, अब हमारे मित्र खेड़ पवन जी सारे देश के नेताओं को चुनौती दे रहे हैं कि केरला में आइए लड़ लीजिए। तो केरला का स्कोर भी आपकी जानकारी के लिए पवन जी, सबसे पहली कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी की सरकार वहीं पे बनी है, EMS नंबूदिरीपाद के नेतृत्व में आपकी पार्टी को हरा
केरला की, मैं वायनाड के, आई एम नॉट डिस्कसिंग द पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ इट, इट्स वेरी सैड एक्चुअली मिस्टर त्यागी that the JDU doesn't want to take a position on this kind of politics. I mean, you know, you don't want to say yes, you don't want to say no. अब तो हम voters को ऐसे, I mean, as if minorities are not citizens of India, you know. So what? Like I said at the beginning, Sagrika Ghosh.
They are the most.
You know what is wrong with Rahul Gandhi contesting or anyone contesting from a Muslim majority seat?
No, you're mistaken. I think you're going on and on one thing, saying that somebody, you're hinting, in fact you're saying openly, nobody has called from the BJP, Christian and Muslims not citizens of this country.
But but you know what is disturbing, Nidhi?
What is the insinuation?
What is disturbing is that, you know, come election time, and from the BJP, all we hear is Hindu, Muslim, Hindu, Muslim. Whether it's Shamshan Kabristan, whether it's Mr Narendra Modi accusing none other than the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh of treason on the Gujarat campaign trail, now Hindu terror, majority, minority. I mean, this is coming from the mouth of the Prime Minister and on the campaign trail. And, you know, all through the year we hear Startup India, Skill India, Swachh Bharat, various schemes of the government. And when it comes to elections, we are actually being forced to be our worst selves, to be our communal selves, to be our hate-filled selves. And this is supposed to win you elections. I have a problem with the choice of Wayanad for Rahul Gandhi. That is a completely different issue. Yeah. What I believe is, for a Prime Minister on the election trail to openly, first of all, talk about majority minority is actually against the People's Representation Act, and the EC should act. The Prime Minister from his high office of constitutional office cannot be speaking about Hindu Muslim, cannot be speaking about minority majority, cannot be speaking of the religion of citizens. This is against the Representation of People's Act.
On that note, I want to ask Dr. Qureshi, who is the former Chief Election Commissioner of India and joins us now on this, that Dr. Qureshi, does this actually violate the act, as Sagrika here is saying? That is this something that sort of appeals to communal feelings, and the EC guidelines clearly say that leaders should not be making an appeal to communal feelings as per their rules during the campaign?
Yes, you know, I have in my hand the Model Code of Conduct. The very first line, the very first clause: no party or candidate shall include in any activity which may aggravate existing differences or create mutual hatred or cause tension between different castes and communities, religious or linguistic. The very first clause of the Model Code of Conduct comes into operation because as Sagarika said, Hindu Muslim, what is this? It's strange and it's very unfortunate.
So it is a clear violation. And then what can the Election Commission do about it, Dr. Qureshi? Because the Election Commission is silent. We haven't heard a word on this. We've asked the Election Commission all day for even a comment. There's nothing. I think we've lost the line with Dr. Qureshi. We'll just try and get him back. But Lalita Kumaramangalam, you heard what Dr. Qureshi, the former Chief Election Commissioner, has just said. He says it's a clear violation of the Election Commission's guidelines. Clearly.
And Nidhi, you yourself just said that you've been trying to contact the Election Commission and they haven't made any comment. So that question is probably best addressed to the EC. I don't work with or for the EC, so that's not a question that I can answer.
India. He's saying it's a clear violation of the Act. It's a clear violation of the Model Code of Conduct.
He is. I'm not criticizing him.
So then, I mean, do you not think that the Prime Minister is, I mean, you still defend what the Prime Minister says? The former CEC says that
Nidhi,
it's indefensible?
I just told you, I just replied to you. I'm going to say exactly what I said earlier, that I don't work for or with the Commission. The Commission has the right to judge, and whatever judgment they deliver is what everybody will accept.
Pawan Khera, quick comment.
Well, I wish you were working for the EC. Perhaps you would have had a better EC. Fact of the matter here is, this is exactly what the Prime Minister wants. He wants to make these polarizing statements. He wants all of us to keep discussing it and keep trying to controversialize it, so that the nation forgets unemployment, the nation forgets to discuss rural distress, the nation forgets to debate Rahul Gandhi's Nyunatam Aay Yojana. This is a brilliant ploy, except that it won't work, because काठ की हांडी एक ही बार चढ़ती है. इंग्लिश का अनुवाद आप निधि से पूछ लीजिएगा, आपको समझ में आ जाएगा.
Dr. Qureshi is back with us. I just want to ask Dr. Qureshi that, sir, I was saying to you earlier that you've made it very clear this is a violation of the election code. We are unable to even get a comment from the Election Commission today on whether they are going to even look into this matter. And there is an increasing frustration that the Election Commission seems unable to act or unwilling to act on what are very blatant violations of the Model Code of Conduct. Can I get your comment on that, sir? Because the EC has a lot of powers during election time. Is it exercising those powers judiciously?
Well, Election Commission doesn't indulge in running commentary. If somebody approaches the Election Commission, as surely many political parties will, and then it will, in a quasi-judicial proceedings, Election Commission will take a view and issue the order. It can also take a suo motu action also, but it will not be just passing comment in the running.
No, but is it acting judiciously, you think, against the general complaints it does get, when it does get complaints, like on the PM's announcement on the satellite issue last week?
No, of course it sits judicially, and it goes into all aspects with the full facts in front of it, and gives out a reasoned written judgment, a speaking order. So in this case also, I'm sure some people will approach Election Commission, and you will get a speaking order from the Election Commission.
But what does it actually amount to, Sagrika? Because even if the EC passes an order, we've rarely seen the Election Commission do anything in the last few years that has actually amounted to someone being truly held accountable, for what they've said or done in violation of the code.
The EC, frankly, doesn't fill one with any degree of confidence whatsoever. When the Prime Minister went on record to announce India's breakthrough in space, which is something we're all very proud of, but there were questions raised about whether it should be raised in the middle of an election campaign. The EC then was at pains to point out that this was something that was routed through the Namo app, and it wasn't actually on Doordarshan, so therefore the EC could not take, they didn't use the platform, but the EC sought refuge in technicality. So whether the EC is actually going to come up with strictures, whether the EC is actually going to come up with some kind of restraining order, whether the EC is actually going to come up with some kind of guideline, or whether the EC is going to come down hard, we really are not in a position to say, and I don't think the EC is going to be doing that. But Nidhi, I really think we should flag this really dangerous tendency that is happening in this election, which is making it the most polarized election India has ever seen. The fact is, you can have democratic combat, you can have bruising electoral combat, but you can't call the other side terror apologist, Pak apologist, Pak agent, anti-national, foreigner, as if they don't have a right to belong to India. What kind of politics is this? You're actually saying, Indira Gandhi, who also fought a very polarizing election, who also dubbed her enemy CIA agent and foreign hand, she never called Jayaprakash Narayan a traitor. So how can you call Sam Pitroda, who may have made some unwise comment about Pulwama, that he's anti-India, he's a terror apologist, he's an enemy of the Indian nation? And in fact, what is this kind of politics?
That is an important point, and I want to ask Ms. Kumaramangalam about that. Is there a way that we cannot have we can do an election campaign where you take on the opponents without branding everyone who opposes Mr. Modi as terrorist sympathizers, which is effectively what he's doing right now?
Nidhi, it's ironic that when the so-called right or the BJP makes any statement, there are a whole slew of extremely negative adjectives that are used to describe those statements, and whatever may be insinuated by or from those statements, especially by those who are obviously not in favor of the BJP, is always what is the gospel truth. During the last elections and over many years, many people who are serving ministers, who are heads of their parties, have used several unmentionable words for Mr. Modi. I haven't really seen any sort of outrage for that. And I'm not saying this because I'm a member of the BJP. I'm saying this because much of that language was, and I'm putting this very mildly, unparliamentary to the extreme. Whether it was Maut Ka Sagar, whether it was Napunsak, and all of these various horrible words. I haven't seen this sort of outrage.
How is it related to?
It looks
how is that related to
outrage? When Mr. Modi has just
there has been a lot of outrage, ma'am, over declining political language. There has been a lot of outrage about bad political language.
I was there during that election. I stood in one of those elections.
Absolutely, but now here we are in 2019.
But let's not argue.
Is everybody who opposes Mr. Modi a terror sympathizer? And is that what the campaign is going to be?
No, that isn't what we have said. I think you're overstating and oversimplifying facts.
We're oversimplifying.
Sam Pitroda, the way he made those comments and his totally unapologetic stance did make him sound like he was pro-Pakistani. I'm sorry to have to say this. I have a great deal of respect for his IT technical expertise, etc. But well, he is not a politician, so perhaps he should have just not made what Sagarika called merely incautious statements. They were not just incautious, they were extremely inflammatory in many ways.
How exactly, can you explain? I mean, how are they pro-Pakistani?
Well, if you turn around and say that, you know, incidents like Pulwama have happened so many times, and you know that thing, the Mumbai, for example, right? As if he can't even remember something where many people were killed and should not have been killed, right? It's extremely inflammatory. Think of the people who actually were killed in their families, regardless of whether they belong to the armed forces
how is it
or were civilians.
It
may have been inflammatory. I don't know how you can't see it's not inflammatory.
And does that make the entire opposition
Maybe that's what your perspective is. It differs from mine.
No, does that make the entire opposition?
Do not hide
Nobody
behind.
has said that the entire opposition
Lalita
is
ji,
pro-Pakistani.
please do not hide
Again,
behind
like
the widows of those 44
Mr.
jawans,
Khera,
because we will
let
have a
me
lot of
complete.
answering to do.
Mr. Khera,
How on
you
earth
are the
did the
one who said
RDX
that
reach
you don't
Pulwama?
interrupt.
How on earth
Now,
were
if
they
you
not
are
allowed
going
to use
I have
aeroplanes?
no
You have a lot of
intentions
answering to
into a
do.
shouting match
How many
with you.
intel
I
failures
don't
can the
believe
country
in
afford
shouting
under
matches.
Mr. Modi?
So please go ahead
Please
and
do
shout
not
to your
hide behind
heart's
the army.
content.
Please do not hide behind the widows of the 44 jawans, because
I am
आपको
not
उन सबको
hiding
जवाब
behind
देना पड़ेगा.
anybody.
और हम प्रश्न
You are
पूछते
the
रहेंगे. We
ones
will
who
ask you
hide
questions
behind
and you
several
better
things.
have answers.
One moment you say one
Your
thing,
intel
another moment
failures
you
will
say,
not
no,
be
no, we
forgiven
never
by
said it.
anyone. छिपते रहिए आप, वीडियोग्राफी कराते रहिए जिम कॉर्बेट में.
Oh,
You
Mr.
could not
Khera,
provide
stop
aeroplanes
threatening
to
me.
our jawans.
On May 23rd,
5 lakh
when the
rupees you
results
could
are
not
out,
afford for our
we'll
jawans.
see whom the people in this
300
country
kilograms
have
of
forgiven
RDX
and whom
reaches
they have
Pulwama,
not.
just
and you are
that.
hiding behind Sam Pitroda?
But it's not
First,
just...
give us answers to our questions.
You know, but this
Nidhi ji,
repeated
I am not.
Pakistan reference...
I know you
asked a
cannot,
question to
because
which
you
I
have no
replied.
answers. Your
Mr.
Prime
Khera,
Minister
if
has
you
no
want
answers.
me not to reply to the
चुनाव
anchor's
हिंदुस्तान में हो
question,
रहा है, पाकिस्तान
then
के
ask
पीछे
her
मत
not
छिपिए
to
जाकर.
ask me those questions. Simple.
The
Okay, one
election
second.
is in India. Do not hide behind Pakistan.
I have a question for Mr. Tyagi.
Talk about issues
who
of
wants
India.
to come in.
I'm not
Tyagi
standing
ji,
behind Pakistan, sir.
Your
You're
Prime
also
Minister
doing
is,
it.
your entire party is.
Tyagi
Talk
ji,
about the farmers
okay,
of
one
India.
second.
Talk about the unemployed
Yes,
of
so
India.
I'm coming to that. That
Nidhi ji.
you know the
You're
real
right.
Tyagi ji,
It's
why
okay
are we
who's
not
hiding behind whom.
why are we not hearing, you know, about the government's fantastic achievements over the last 5 years in this campaign, rather than hearing about Pakistan? आज core sector growth के numbers आए हैं. Just today those numbers have come. India's core sector growth was 2.1% in February of 2019 versus 5.4% exactly 1 year ago. It has come down by more than half. Is that why your ally, the BJP, and all of you in the JDU and in the those of you in the NDA are not talking about the economy? You would rather focus on Pakistan. Pakistan हंस रहा है हमारे ऊपर सर, इतना बड़ा देश है और हम पाकिस्तान की बात कर रहे हैं रोज कैंपेन में.
मैं निधि जी संग्रीजा जी के बयान पर थोड़ी सफाई देना चाहता हूं. मैं जेपी मूवमेंट में रहा हूं और जब जयप्रकाश जी को ट्रेटर कहा गया तो उन्होंने भुवनेश्वर में बयान दिया, द डे जयप्रकाश नारायण विल टर्न एंटी नेशनल देयर विल बी नो नेशनलिस्ट इन द कंट्री. ये पहली बार नहीं है, नंबर 1. नंबर 2, 1982 में मिसिस गांधी ने फारूक अब्दुल्ला की सरकार को बर्खास्त कर दिया. उसके बाद चुनाव हुए. मिसिस गांधी का बयान अभी भी सुर्खियों में है जो उन्होंने जम्मू में दिया था कि भाइयों और बहनों किस तरह से हमारे मंदिर श्रीनगर में और कश्मीर में तोड़े जा रहे हैं. नंबर 3, विद ऑल माई रेस्पेक्ट टू माई राज्यसभा कोलीग मिस्टर MS गिल, चुनाव आयोग जो EC हैं वो भी राज्यसभा में भेज करके मिनिस्टर बनाए गए, तब किसी ने EC की न्यूट्रलिटी पे कोई ऐतराज नहीं किया. चीजें बहुत दिनों से खराब हैं निधि जी, उसको ठीक करने की आवश्यकता है. मैं अपनी पार्टी की तरफ से कहना चाहता हूं कि हम किसी तरह के कम्युनल गेम के हिस्से नहीं हैं. हम चाहते हैं जो सवाल आपने उठाया है, किसानों के सवाल, मजदूरों के सवाल, जो मार्जिनाइज सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी है उनके सवाल, उस पर बहस हो और जनता जिसको चाहे उसको जिता दे. जो कांग्रेस पार्टी के हमारे मित्रों के बयान हैं वो भी कोई कम खतरनाक नहीं रहे हैं.
जैसे कि
अब चुनाव के वक्त सब लोग अपनी अपनी बात उठाते हैं.
Let me ask Dr. Qureshi and the other sort of shocker today, which was from Mr Adityanath, the Chief Minister of UP. Dr. Qureshi, the Election Commission has clearly said that campaigners have to desist from indulging in any political propaganda involving the defence forces. And today the Chief Minister, or actually yesterday, the Chief Minister of UP in a rally talked about the Indian Army as Mr Modi's sena, as Mr Modi's army. Is that not a violation of the Election Commission's code of conduct?
Well, prima facie, it does appear to be, and I'm sure when the matter goes before the commission and they examine it, they'll find it objectionable, but let us see.
But what can they do? What can they do if they had 3 choices? What could they do? Let's say they found someone guilty of something like this.
Well,
then what?
So, well, what they can do is under the model code is 3 things, which is all warning, advice or censure. These are the 3 things they can do, and that is all they can do, because it's not an act under which you can fine or you can award a prison or anything. It's just the moral authority of the model code under which you just can advise, caution, warn or censure.
Well, the point I think a lot of people ask Sagrika Ghosh is you just feel often that the EC is empowered and yet it can't do much. But let's talk about what Adityanath said. To call it Modi's sena is again, it's a shocker, and we have, as Vishnu was reporting, sources in the army saying how unhappy they are with this. That has been conveyed to the Ministry of Defence. Ex-army officers, ex-army chiefs also spoke out today saying, please don't drag the army into this. It just takes the political discourse to another level.
Well, and we've seen this trend continue, Nidhi, because it's a process by which every institution is being subordinated to the personality and individuality of the Prime Minister. We have had the Prime Minister himself say on a campaign speech that Modi jaake maar ke aaya. Referring to the ghar mein ghus ke. Yeah, and ghar mein ghus ke maar ke aaya. So this process by which institutions, whether it's the armed forces, whether it's the DRDO, where Mr Modi himself made an announcement about the scientific breakthrough, of which we are very proud, but it seems as if the scientists did not make that announcement. Mr Modi himself made that announcement. So it's a process by which every institution institution, army, science and tech, other institutions are all being subordinated to the larger than life individual persona of the Prime Minister. And I think this is terribly dangerous for democracy, because it's the institutions that actually preserve democratic values, it's the institutions that actually preserve constitutional values. It can't all be subordinated to the authoritarian figure of the Prime Minister. And you know, to refer to the army as Modi ji ki sena, to me is really a shocker, because as was said in an article recently which I read, that politicization of the armed forces, or in any way bringing the armed forces into the ambit of politics, is really the biggest blow to our constitutional democracy. I mean, to politicize the armed forces in the way that is going on at the moment is really perhaps a step that no other Prime Minister has been so bold to do.
Okay, so let me ask Ms. Kumaramangalam about that. Ma'am, do you think that what the UP Chief Minister said did cross a line?
I don't think he crossed a line. I think he was a bit over enthusiastic, because in about half a minute after he said Modi ji ka sena, he said also Bharat ka sena. So as Mr. Tyagi pointed out, this is election time, and people get over enthusiastic when they make speeches. While I wouldn't say that it's the ideal thing to have done, I don't think it's as big a crime as it's being made out to be.
You don't think that calling it Mr. Modi's army is, I mean, it's just over enthusiasm? He's the Chief Minister of India's biggest state. Does he not need to be a little more responsible as an elected representative in what he tells voters, or it's a free pass for everybody because we're in election
everybody
season?
is a human. Yes, he's a Chief Minister, but he also is human. And he is also a man who's been subjected to an enormous amount of abuse from the so-called liberals. So no, I do not find it more than over enthusiastic.
So therefore it becomes Modi ji's sena because liberals don't like Mr. Adityanath.
I never said that at all. Why are you jumping to conclusions
because
and trying to put words into my mouth?
Because I didn't understand
That's your
the connection.
version of it, not mine.
I didn't understand the connection between Mr. Adityanath's comments on the army, which
I'm sorry, Nidhi,
the
if
army
you can't
believes
follow
is
what I'm saying.
I don't know what you're saying. What does the liberal dislike of Mr. Adityanath have to do with his comments on the army today? Please explain. You made the connection.
Look, Mr. Yogi Adityanath was making an election speech.
And so all is forgiven.
As I said, perhaps in his over-enthusiasm, he made a statement saying Modi's army. Within about 50 seconds of that, he also said, Bharat ke, I think Bharat, my Hindi is not that great. He said India's army. So let's not, I mean, you know, take only one side of the story and present it before the public of this country. At least I am not going to do that.
So it was over enthusiasm, Pawan Khera. Are we making too much of a big deal of this?
No, he's also a yogi, and yogis are not supposed to get over enthusiastic, for God's sake. I also know a couple of yogis. They never get over enthusiastic. Fact of the matter is, his only claim to fame is that he himself led a private army at one point. So I don't know whether he's getting confused. Please spare the Indian army. This is the most apolitical force in the world, I would say, and we are proud of it. Recently, General Huda cautioned the Prime Minister, do not politicize surgical strikes. After that, Admiral Ramdas wrote to the Election Commission, please do not use army and its symbols in your election and in your political campaigning. Now, we have to be... Let's please, Lalita ji, you also decide, and Mr. Tyagi, even you should decide. If you want to be on the wrong side of the history, this is a very historic moment. Please do not get carried away, do not get over enthusiastic while supporting a man who is patently wrong here. Let's admit that he was wrong. Show some greatness of heart. Just say, yes, Yogi Adityanath was wrong. Yes, Prime Minister was wrong when he made those remarks about Hindus, Muslims and Christians.
No, Mr. Tyagi is saying there are no yes and no answers to this, which, you know,
आपको माफ नहीं करेगा त्यागी जी.
I also want to before I end this program also want to look at the political decision to have Rahul Gandhi contest from Wayanad in Kerala, which itself, as Sagrika was pointing out, is an important story. It has exposed fissures in the opposition camp, with the left particularly unhappy about that. I spoke earlier to the left's Brinda Karat on Rahul Gandhi's decision. Well, Ms. Karat, you said in a rather scathing piece on our website on NDTV.com that the Congress under Rahul Gandhi has lost the plot by deciding to field him from Wayanad against the left. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's really a question as to what is the Congress's political platform, because the Congress president and the Congress party have publicly stated and have worked towards the defeat of the Bharatiya Janata Party on the basis that this election is not an ordinary election. It's an election basically to save India. Now, he's coming to Kerala and his choice of seat in the south, Kerala. Why is he coming to fight the left then in Kerala? Who is he fighting in Kerala? There's no BJP, hardly a BJP presence in Wayanad. Across the border, there is a strong BJP presence. The Congress president's party is part of a ruling alliance in Karnataka, but he chooses not to fight the BJP in Karnataka. He chooses to fight the strongest force against the BJP in Kerala in alliance with those in the UDF who include the Muslim League, who also have an understanding in front with some Muslim fundamentalist organizations. So from a stated position of fighting the BJP to coming to a state where the BJP is hardly any presence, to fight the left in alliance with forces who can be termed to be fundamentalist forces. So my question really is, this is not a credible political platform, and such a position taken by the main opposition parties, I think it weakens the whole secular democratic consensus.
Well, you're just saying now that you think the Congress is not serious about this fight against the BJP. So do you believe that they're actually inadvertently helping the BJP, like in Uttar Pradesh, where they're fielding candidates across all seats now?
Well, the SP and the BSP and the RLD alliance has made fairly strong statements about the Congress rule in Uttar Pradesh. And since they are the main force fighting in Uttar Pradesh, I think what they say about the role of the Congress in Uttar Pradesh should be taken seriously.
Well, there is also, Ms. Karat, a feeling among some that the Congress is not fighting this election to defeat Mr. Modi in this election anymore, that it's fighting for 2022 in UP and 2024 in the Lok Sabha. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, unfortunately, the Congress is not answering any of these questions. It is for the Congress to answer. Certainly, the message given by the Congress president coming to a state where the BJP has a very small presence to take on the left, which is a fighter against the BJP, those questions which you are raising are very strong among the people, and I think the Congress responsibility to answer those questions.
Right.
There's also an issue of accountability here, and they should answer them. As far as Kerala is concerned, we're fighting to win all 20 seats, including Wayanad.
Finally, Ms. Karat, some say that this is a total overreaction by the left about RG's candidature, that he has a right to stand, from wherever he wants to. That's his democratic right, and that the left is actually threatened by his decision to stand in Wayanad because of, how Kerala politics plays out.
I think as far as the right of a candidate, an Indian citizen, to fight anywhere he or she wishes is a very correct point. And certainly everybody has a right to contest wherever they want. And there's nothing which prevents them at any level except the political level. I mean, when the president of the main opposition party gives the impression that he is running away from the battle against the BJP by coming to a state where the BJP has no presence, that is certainly an important political question. There's no question of anybody, saying you don't have a right or you show. These are questions which come. And I think they are important and go beyond individual decisions because they affect the general atmosphere of a national consensus building up to ensure, regardless of whatever deep and fundamental differences we have, to minimize the division of vote and to ensure the defeat of the BJP.
All right, Brinda Karat speaking to us, giving us the left's perspective there on Rahul Gandhi's decision to stand from Wayanad. Let me get two quick comments from Sagrika Ghosh and Pawan Khera here. Sagrika, you actually were saying earlier that you feel this is a mistake that Rahul Gandhi is making. Why?
I think the optics of contesting from Kerala could have been avoided and are not very good for various reasons. First of all, Nidhi, I think there is no danger of Rahul Gandhi losing in Amethi. He's upped his prestige. BSP are not fighting that seat. He's going to win in Amethi. He has every right to contest another seat. But when a big leader contests another seat, it's normally symbolic. It's normally symbolic. And Modi contested from Varanasi to show this was, he was not a Gujarati leader. He was a Hindu, pan-Hindu, Hriday Samrat. Varanasi was the symbol of Hinduism. Uttar Pradesh. A second seat is always symbolic. Now, what is the symbol of Kerala? It's a safe state. There's no BJP there. It's a safe seat. Yes, it's not minority dominated, but it is minority are there. So, the symbolism of Kerala defeats me. And the fact is, Nidhi, I think the Congress has to realize, and this is an article I've written also, that in this particular election, you can't have Congress maximization and BJP minimization at the same time.
You have to have one on the other.
Between Congress maximization and BJP minimization. I think if you're trying to make the Congress grow, then you simply don't have the numbers to not take realize on
why couldn't you have chosen
and Brinda both? It's a simpler solution.
Why couldn't you have chosen, say, a Karnataka seat?
Make up your mind whether or not Congress is the national alternative to the BJP.
Then why not fight the BJP?
I'm coming.
Then why not fight the BJP?
We are fighting the BJP in the entire country, including Amethi.
Fight in Karnataka or stand from Vidarbha.
This is a May I, madam, please? This is a tri-junction of Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So we know what we are doing. If the left is so worried about fighting the BJP, please withdraw your candidate. We are the national alternative. There is no debate on that.
Why?
Now, Brinda comes and says Rahul Gandhi is running away from Amethi. We are not running away. We are fighting Amethi also.
No.
Fact of the matter is, whether it was Indira Gandhi, she also went to South.
Sure, but Karnataka is in the
Sonia
south also.
Why should we go to Karnataka alone and why not Kerala, which
because
is a
there the
tri-junction of all three
BJP
states?
is your direct adversary.
There's no BJP in Kerala.
So what? Left is also, we are fighting left in Kerala, not just.
So you'll fight everybody everywhere.
Not everybody everywhere. The onus of fighting BJP is on the Congress nationally. Let the left withdraw.
No, so the Congress position has shifted from Mahagathbandhan to Akla Chalore to we will fight everybody everywhere.
The brainchild of Mr. Modi and Ms. Sagarika Ghosh. Wherever we have alliances, we have alliances. No, it's the media. It's the media.
All right. Rahul Gandhi is going to be filing his nomination in Wayanad on the 4th. So I invite you back for far more detailed analysis on why he decided to go and choose that particular seat and what effect that's going to have on opposition politics. But for now, we are done for the day and we will see you tomorrow. Good night.